Hello, my name is Donald Smith, and I am a survivor of Straight Incorporated. I went into the Straight program down in St. Petersburg, Florida, just 12 days after I turned 20 on November 28, 1981. Now, while I was in the St. Pete building, I was never a part of the St. Petersburg group because the day before I came in, they had separated everybody from Cincinnati in that tri state area, and they separated them from the St. Pete group, and they were meeting in a different part of the building, essentially making me the first newcomer introduced into the Cincinnati group. For the first 40 days, I really struggled just to get my bearings and to try to understand what the steps were about, how the program applied to my life, and everything like that. I was really having trouble when they would bring up a rap topic and ask me to share a story that related to it. I had a hard time. Even though there are dozens of stories that I could have told at that time, I just could not focus and think of anything that related. And a lot of staff and a lot of people in the group, I think, thought that I didn't think I had a problem. And so I got confronted a lot. As a matter of fact, I came in, I'll never forget this. I came in um, and my hair was parted on the side. And it had always been parted on the side. I was not physically able to part my hair in the middle because of a double crown or some kind of a scalp issue that I had that absolutely made it impossible for me to part my hair in the middle. And a lot of people, I got confronted like a week in, accusing me of being a group kiss butt because I had my hair parted on the side. And it actually took me telling staff, listen, if you don't believe me, call my parents and ask them if I ever had my hair parted on the side or in the middle. And I think at some point somebody did call and confirm that, yeah, he's always had his hair parted that way. But it was just the stupid, ridiculously dumb things that they were confronting me about that just, drove me crazy. On top of that, I had an old comer that wasn't even from Cincinnati. This was a St. Pete fifth phaser. And I'm not going to say anything bad about him. He was doing what he was supposed to do, and he was an okay guy, but he was just very intimidating. And he had a foster brother who was also intimidating as well. Um, so I was going home with two guys that I didn't even know who they were, and so it wasn't like I could. And then he couldn't really monitor how I was doing in group because we were in two separate groups. And so I didn't understand how he could write progress reports every week on how I was doing, other than what I was doing at home. He could write nothing about how I was doing in the group or anything. So on top of that, I also knew two people in the program. One that I had gone to church with, but she and I had never uh, gotten high together or partied or anything like that. And then there was a guy that I was in high school with, and I think we might have smoked a joint or two in the smoking area, but I didn't even really know him. But even at that, I wasn't allowed to associate with them. I couldn't talk to them until I was on fourth phase. And so that made it really, really difficult for me to get acclimated to everything. 40 days in, we boarded a plane. There was 55 of us, and we flew to Cincinnati. And on January 6, 1982, we opened up the Cincinnati branch of Straight Incorporated. 33 days later, I made second phase. And I have to tell you that the old comer that I had in Cincinnati was the last old comer I had, and he was phenomenal. He was a great old comer. His name was Fred. Just um, a phenomenal old comer. He treated me really well. He actually treated me like part of the family, and did his mom and dad. So I made second phase, and from there on, my program was relatively uneventful. Um, I I never got any setbacks. I never got started over. I never copped out. I was never subjected to the restraining and the physical violence that I saw. I never was subjected to the sleep deprivation that they use on some clients. I was never subjected to the food restrictions or the peanut butter diet that they would put some people through or anything like that. I just went through my program, um, as quickly as I could, taking it as seriously as I could, because I will admit that when I came into that program, I had a drinking problem and I needed help. The thing is, what I was witnessing throughout my program, I thought was normal and okay because I didn't know of another program that I could compare it to recognize that, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And so I embraced this program wholeheartedly. And up until several years after I got out, I had supported the program and credited the program with saving my life. So I 7-stepped the program 9 days shy of a year after I came in on November 19th, 1982. 3 months later, I was elected to become an officer of the 7-Step Society, which basically meant that I was now leading raps on Tuesdays and Saturday nights for the 7-Step raps that they had. And 3 months after that, I became the president of the 7-Step Society and continued doing that. Now, 6 months, I'm allowed to date. And I decided to date a girl that I had gone to high school with and dated in my senior year of high school. Unbeknownst to the staff or anybody else, I had stayed in touch with her throughout my program. She had written letters to my mom and dad, addressed to my mom and dad, but they were written for me. And I was able to read those on 4th and 5th phase. I never dreamed about telling anybody from Straight that I had these letters or that I had read them. As a matter of fact, I believe we threw those away after they were read because I worried about a spot inspection from a staff member that would come in periodically to check to make sure that the security of the house was up to snuff. And I was afraid that they were going to stumble across those letters and get me in trouble. So I never said anything to anybody about those letters. So we finally met, and I went down to University in Kentucky, and we spent the day together, and then we engaged in a one-time sexual act. That was something that I regretted, and a few days later, she broke off the relationship. But I was stuck with a great deal of guilt and shame. First of all, I was raised in a Christian home that said premarital sex was wrong. Straight Inc., while they didn't have a written rule saying that premarital sex was prohibited, it was pretty much an unspoken rule that premarital sex wasn't to be tolerated. And I had this immense sense of guilt about what I had done and fear of getting caught. I couldn't tell anybody. I couldn't tell the program coordinator who I answered to as an officer about what I did because I knew I would lose my position as an officer. And I may even run the risk of getting put on a refresher program. I couldn't tell my mom and dad because my mom at that time worked as a secretary for Straight, and I was afraid she was going to take that down to a staff member and let them know. And then again, being put back on a refresher program was something I'm not wanting. The paranoia and fear and shame and guilt was so bad that I actually thought that the girlfriend was going to call Straight and let them know that what we did. It was ridiculous. Of course, it never happened. She didn't even have a phone number or anything on how to reach anybody from Straight, but it was real, and the fear was real, and the paranoia was real, and the shame and the guilt I can remember being at work and all of a sudden just breaking down in tears, crying my eyes out because of the guilt. But instead of talking about it and getting it off my chest and moving on, I held it in. And at this point, I was in pre-training to go on staff trainee. And in October of 1983, almost a year after I 7-stepped, I went on staff trainee. And it's here where things started to really go downhill for me. And the abuse is where this really started at this point. My abuse story is different from most that you'll see here. This is about the abuse that I had under the people that I worked with that were supposed to be there to help me and support me and help me make junior staff, but instead did just the opposite.